Emily stood by the window of her small sunlit kitchen, watching the last golden rays of afternoon spill across the quiet street. The house was calm, almost too calm, the kind of calm that made her heart ache with a soft, persistent loneliness. The faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock were the only sounds. And she realized she hadn't heard laughter or conversation in hours, maybe even days. She sighed softly, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and tried to shake off the melancholy that had settled over her like an invisible weight. Her son Jake had been busy with school and sports, and lately, life had felt like a series of routine motions: waking, preparing meals, checking homework, and quietly hoping for some spark of connection. However small, Emily's eyes drifted to the small stack of letters on the kitchen counter notes from neighbors. A flyer for a community event, even a postcard from a cousin she hadn't seen in years. Each piece of paper felt distant, almost unreachable, like reminders of a world moving on without her. She had friends, yes, but lately interactions had been brief, perfunctory, almost mechanical. She missed something deeper, something that made her feel alive in ways she hadn't felt in years, as if sensing her thoughts. Jake's voice called from upstairs. "Mom, Alex is here." Emily felt a flutter of anticipation. Alex, her son's friend, had mentioned he wanted to come over after school, but she hadn't expected him today. She adjusted her cardigan and smoothed the skirt she was wearing. It wasn't that she needed to impress anyone, not really, but something about hosting Alex felt different. Perhaps it was the possibility of conversation, of connection. Or maybe it was simply the warmth of welcoming someone into her home, who wasn't just another obligation. She opened the door to find Alex standing there, slightly nervous with a backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked like any ordinary teenager, messy hair. A hesitant smile, but there was something in his eyes, something curious and open, that made Emily pause. "Hi, Alex." "Come in," she said, stepping aside. Her voice sounded lighter than she expected, almost as if hope had quietly entered the room with him. Jake followed quickly, grinning. "Mom's making tea," he said, "so sit down. You can tell her about the history project later." Alex nodded, giving Emily a small, polite smile. "Thanks, Mrs. Bennet," he said softly. Emily led them into the living room, the afternoon sunlight casting warm patterns across the carpet. She felt a strange mix of nervousness and anticipation. It was silly, she told herself. Alex was just a friend of her son's, yet she found herself noticing the details, the tilt of his head when he smiled. It's the way he carried himself, the quiet attentiveness in his eyes. There was something gentle about him, a kind of awareness that seemed older than his years, and it made Emily's chest tighten in a way she couldn't quite explain. She busied herself with preparing tea, the kettle hissing softly on the stove. Steam curled upward, carrying the comforting scent of chamomile. She placed the cups on a tray, trying to focus on the ritual, the warmth of the porcelain, the sound of the tea pouring into the cups, but her mind kept drifting back to Alex, to the small, shy way he lingered in the doorway before stepping inside. Jake chattered happily about his week, but Emily only half listened. She was struck by a sudden, almost startling thought. Sometimes, life offered fleeting moments of unexpected connection, moments that came when you least expected them, moments that could quietly shift the way you saw the world. Could this tea visit be one of those moments? She shook her head lightly, smiling to herself. Perhaps she was imagining things. Yet as she carried the tray into the living room, she felt a subtle shift in the air. Alex looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. And Emily felt a flicker of something: curiosity, understanding, unspoken emotion. She quickly looked away, pretending to arrange the cups. But the warmth of the moment lingered. "Here you go," she said softly, setting the tray down on the coffee table. Alex reached for a cup, his hands brushing against hers for a brief second. It was nothing, really, but the simple gesture felt loaded with an unspoken familiarity, as though the world had momentarily paused just for them. Emily settled into the armchair across from them, forcing herself to focus on the conversation. Yet the room felt charged with quiet anticipation. a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. Maybe it was the sun casting long shadows across the floor, or maybe it was the simple act of sharing tea with someone who seemed to notice more than most. As Alex took his first sip, Emily allowed herself a small, private smile. She couldn't explain it, not yet. She only knew that something about this ordinary Sunday, this small, seemingly insignificant act of inviting her son's friend for tea, was beginning to feel extraordinary and deep down. She sensed that by the end of the afternoon, nothing would feel quite the same again. Emily poured a little more tea into Alex's cup, smiling as he thanked her softly. The quiet in the living room felt different now, warmer, almost intimate, in any romantic way that crossed boundaries, but in the gentle awareness that some moments carried a weight beyond ordinary conversation. As Alex sipped, he spoke about school projects and weekend plans, but Emily noticed the small hesitations in his words, the way he occasionally drifted off as if caught in a memory. And in that pause, she saw herself mirrored in him the way she used to retreat into her own thoughts, wishing for someone who truly understood her. It reminded her of her own youth, years ago, when friendships had felt intense and fleeting. She remembered afternoons spent sitting in a sunlit park with a childhood friend, sharing secrets and dreams they weren't yet brave enough to speak aloud. There had been laughter and quiet, and an unspoken longing that neither of them fully named. Life had pulled them in different directions, and that closeness had faded, but the memory remained soft and tender. Like a melody she could still hum in her mind. Watching Alex now, Emily felt a similar echo. There was something in his gaze, in the way he listened, that reminded her of those long-ago afternoons. He wasn't just polite or friendly, he was attentive, observant. The kind of person who noticed the small details of life, the way the sunlight caught on a leaf, the way someone's voice changed when they were nervous. And in noticing, he made her feel noticed in return, as though her own thoughts and feelings mattered. Jake was sprawled on the carpet, showing Alex a drawing he had made, but Emily felt almost invisible to him, lost in the quiet realization that this ordinary visit was stirring something unexpected inside her. She thought of all the small, overlooked connections she had ignored over the years, the neighbor who smiled too quickly, the friend who always remembered her birthday, the stranger in a bookstore who had asked for a recommendation and then lingered in conversation longer than was necessary. Every moment had been a thread, she realized, leading her here to this tea and this quiet afternoon. "Do you like reading?" she asked Alex gently, noticing the book still resting on the coffee table. He nodded. "I love it," he said. "I've always liked stories that make you feel something, that stay with you after you finish them." Emily smiled, a quiet echo of recognition in her heart. She remembered feeling that exact same way as a young woman, immersed in novels that had shaped her, comforted her, and sometimes made her ache. And now, seeing that spark in Alex, she felt a strange, tender connection. It was as if the past and present were gently brushing against each other, quietly reminding her of the threads of empathy and understanding that had always mattered most. For a moment, she thought of Jake and the worry she sometimes felt as a mother. She had always wanted him to grow up surrounded by kindness and warmth. And seeing him laugh and confide in Alex brought a deep sense of relief. Yet there was more than maternal pride in her chest, subtle, unnameable awareness that the world could still surprise her with small, meaningful encounters. Alex looked up at her suddenly, as if noticing her gaze. "Do you ever miss people you used to know?" he asked quietly, almost shyly. Emily's heart tightened. The question was simple, yet loaded. She thought of old friends, old dreams, and unspoken feelings that had never found their voice. "I do," she said softly. "Sometimes I think about people I've lost touch with, moments I wish I could relive, and the ways life has changed me. But I also think those memories remind us who we really are." Alex nodded slowly, as though he understood more than he should for a boy his age. "Yeah, I get that," he said, his voice thoughtful. "Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying a lot in my head, memories that don't have anywhere to go. It's nice to talk about them." Emily's chest swelled with a quiet warmth. She realized that the bond forming here wasn't sudden or forced, it was built on recognition and understanding, on shared humanity and the willingness to see each other fully. And yet, there was a subtle ache beneath the surface, too, a longing for moments that had passed, for connections that had been lost, for closeness that life had always seemed to keep, just out of reach. She thought about all the things that had kept people apart: distance, fear, timing, misunderstandings, and the quiet hesitation that sometimes lingered even when hearts were open. And yet, in this room, with tea steaming between them, those barriers felt smaller. Here was a boy who trusted her, who wanted to share, and here was she who wanted to listen and understand. The afternoon had begun to mellow into early evening, and the golden light through the windows softened into a gentle amber glow. Emily and Alex had spent hours talking, though neither noticed the passage of time. The room felt almost suspended, a quiet bubble where the outside world didn't intrude. Just as Emily reached for another biscuit from the plate, a soft knock came at the door. Jake peeked in with a wide grin. "Mom, you should see this," he said, eyes sparkling with excitement. "There's a little garden fair down the street, lots of handmade crafts and lemonade stands. I thought maybe we could all walk down before it closes." Emily hesitated for a moment. She had been lost in conversation, lost in reflection, and the idea of stepping outside now felt both mundane and strangely appealing. Then she noticed Alex's expression, his eyes brightening in a way that mirrored the light in her own chest. "That sounds nice," he said quietly. It was a small decision, almost trivial, but it marked a turning point. Emily realized how often life's most significant moments were hidden in the smallest choices: the brief invitation, the casual walk, the shared glance. And in that instant, she felt a stir of excitement, of curiosity, a quiet pulse of hope she hadn't realized had been dormant. They gathered their jackets, and the three of them stepped into the cool, late afternoon air. The neighborhood seemed transformed by the gentle glow of the setting sun. Children ran past, laughing, and the scent of flowers mixed with freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery. Emily felt a flutter in her chest, a soft recognition that life could surprise her, even in ordinary places. As they walked, Alex fell naturally into step beside her, while Jake scampered ahead to examine a display of painted birdhouses. Emily noticed the way Alex glanced at her from time to time, as if seeking her reaction or sharing a private amusement. Each glance, brief as it was, felt loaded with an unspoken warmth. They arrived at the fair, where tables were arranged with hand-knitted scarves, jars of honey, and colorful bouquets of flowers. Emily wandered through the stalls, but her attention kept returning to Alex. When he stopped in front of a small display of old books, she caught the faintest flicker of nostalgia in his eyes. "I used to love browsing through secondhand bookstores with my grandfather," he said softly. "I miss that." Emily felt her chest tighten. "I understand," she replied gently. "Sometimes it's the little rituals we miss the most, those moments that remind us who we are." A gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming roses, and Alex reached out instinctively to adjust a small, crooked frame on the display table. Their hands brushed lightly for a brief second. Emily felt a sudden, sharp awareness of the connection between them, not physical in a romantic or inappropriate sense, but emotional, subtle, and undeniable. It was the kind of moment that made the heart notice the presence of another in a new, profound way. They moved to a stand selling lemonade, and Emily watched as Alex laughed at Jake's exaggerated description of a school project. The sound was easy and unguarded, and it stirred something in Amelia, longing she hadn't fully acknowledged. A gentle ache that came from the recognition of shared human experience. Here was a boy with a kind heart, a sharp mind, and a quiet sensitivity that resonated with her own. When they found a bench beneath a blooming maple tree, Alex sat beside Emily, leaving a respectful space but staying close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a moment, they were silent, listening to the sounds of the fair, the distant chatter, the soft music from a small speaker, the laughter of children chasing each other. And in that silence, Emily felt an unexpected intensity, a vivid awareness that she had not felt in years. Alex looked at her, his eyes reflecting the warm light of the sunset. I never really knew I could feel like this, he said quietly, almost to himself. It's like everything makes more sense when someone notices the little things. When someone really listens. Emily felt a lump in her throat. I know exactly what you mean, she whispered. It's rare, isn't it? To feel understood without having to explain everything. To feel that connection without trying too hard. The words hung in the air, a quiet confession that needed no elaboration. There was no misunderstanding, no expectation. It's just the shared recognition of a momentous, delicate turning point that made the heart swell with emotion. Fate, coincidence, and a small decision to take a walk had led them here. To this unremarkable street transformed by sunlight, flowers, and presents. And yet, for Emily, it felt extraordinary as the evening deepened. The colors of the sunset faded into soft purples and oranges. Jake ran ahead, waving at a friend he had spotted, leaving Emily and Alex alone on the bench. For the first time, there was a pause, a suspended moment in which the world seemed to shrink to the two of them. They didn't speak immediately. They didn't need to. The connection was already there, unspoken, tender. And fully present, Emily realized that this ordinary day, this simple walk to a small neighborhood fair, had unexpectedly reignited feelings she had thought were long-buried: nostalgia, longing, and a gentle hope for meaningful human connection. And in that realization, she felt a quiet joy, that even life's briefest coincidences could open the heart in ways one never anticipated. It was in these small, fleeting moments, the brush of a hand, the shared silence, the laughter of children in the distance, that Emily understood something profound. Life was made of tiny sparks, and sometimes one small spark could change the way you felt about everything. And as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold, Emily knew that today would be remembered not for the fair, the lemonade, or the books, but for the subtle, emotional shift that had quietly taken hold between her and Alex. The evening air had cooled as Emily and Alex lingered on the bench beneath the maple tree. The distant laughter of children and the soft chatter from the fair had faded into a gentle quiet, leaving only the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Emily's fingers traced the edge of her cup almost absent-mindedly, but her mind was far from idle. She was aware of Alex beside her, the quiet presence that felt both comforting and unsettling in its unexpected intensity. Alex shifted slightly, as if wrestling with a thought he hadn't yet voiced. Emily noticed the hesitation in his movements, the way he glanced toward her and then quickly away, as though afraid to linger on the gaze too long. She understood that feeling well, the quiet hesitation when emotions are felt but never fully expressed. You seem different somehow, Alex said quietly, his voice almost lost in the evening air. I mean, you're always kind, but today it feels warmer, like there's more than what I usually see. Emily smiled faintly, a small ache tugging at her chest. I suppose some days feel different, she replied softly. Sometimes people notice things they haven't before, and it reminds you that connection matters more than you think. She paused, choosing her words carefully. It's easy to go through life without realizing how much small moments can change everything. Alex nodded, though he didn't speak immediately. Emily sensed that he was struggling with something he wanted to say, something that carried weight, but he wasn't sure how to put it into words. She knew that struggle well, the quiet wrestling of the heart when desire and hesitation collide. I feel like I should say something, Alex admitted finally, his voice low. But I don't want it to sound strange or make things awkward. Emily's heart softened. You can say it, she encouraged gently. I promise it won't make things awkward. He took a deep breath, glancing at her as if summoning courage from somewhere deep within. I think I've been waiting for moments like this. I mean, small moments where someone really sees you. And today, being here, talking to you, it feels like something I didn't even know I was missing. Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. There it was, the unspoken truth laid bare in a few simple sentences. She realized how deeply she resonated with his words, how much she herself had been quietly yearning for connection that went beyond ordinary conversation. She could feel her pulse quicken, a mix of emotion she hadn't anticipated. I, I know exactly what you mean, she whispered. Sometimes life moves so fast, we forget to notice the people who are right in front of us. And when someone notices you, really notices, it changes everything, even if you don't understand why at first. Alex looked at her, eyes wide and earnest, and Emily saw in that gaze the raw honesty of someone opening their heart without expectation, without demand, just a desire to be understood. She wanted to reach out to bridge the gap between words and feelings, but something held her back. The fear of misreading a moment, of stepping too far, kept her rooted to the bench. I didn't know I could feel this. Comfortable, Alex continued after a long pause. With someone I've barely known. But it feels right somehow, like it's supposed to happen this way. Emily's lips curved into a small, bittersweet smile. She understood completely. She, too, felt the pull of this quiet connection, the warmth that lingered even in silence. The way their shared words had brushed away years of loneliness. And yet, she knew there were unspoken boundaries, uncharted emotions, and the delicate reality of timing that could never be ignored. I feel the same, she said softly. It's rare to meet someone who makes you feel seen. And it's even rarer to realize how much you've been missing that feeling until it arrives unexpectedly. The evening had settled into a soft twilight, and Emily and Alex remained on the bench beneath the maple tree. The fair was winding down, the distant laughter of children replaced by the gentle hum of evening cicadas. Jake had wandered off too, joined a group of kids, leaving the two of them alone with the quiet rhythm of the night. Emily felt the cool breeze on her face, but inside, her heart was warm with an unfamiliar energy. She glanced at Alex, noticing how the fading light highlighted the sincerity in his eyes. There was something fragile, almost delicate about the moment between them, something that demanded attention and care. Alex spoke first, breaking the silence. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about noticing people and how small moments can change everything. He paused, swallowing hard. I think I finally understand it now. Not just with you, but in general. Life can surprise you in ways you don't expect, if you're paying attention. Emily nodded slowly. She wanted to reach out to say more, but the right words seemed to hover just out of reach. She felt the weight of the unspoken truth from earlier, the quiet acknowledgement of a bond that had grown through simple gestures, shared stories, and fleeting glances. I feel the same, she whispered. Sometimes we get so caught up in routines, in what's expected, that we forget the small things, the moments that make life feel real. Alex's lips curved into a soft, tentative smile. I think. Today, I realized that the world isn't as lonely as it sometimes feels. Not when you notice it. Not when someone notices you. Emily's heart swelled. She felt a quiet thrill. The gentle ache of hope mingled with the soft pain of longing. This connection, unexpected, delicate, and unspoken, had grown into something she couldn't ignore. Yet she also knew that the moment required patience and care, that rushing it could shatter the fragile intimacy they had built. A small sounded distant bark of a dog reminded her of the ordinary world beyond this quiet bubble. She looked around, feeling a tender nostalgia for all the fleeting moments that had led her here. Every past disappointment, every quiet longing, every missed opportunity had guided her to this precise instant. She realized that sometimes the heart recognized what the mind could not yet name. Alex shifted slightly, meeting her gaze. Ellie? I know this might sound strange, he began, hesitating, but I feel like there's something important here. Something I don't want to let pass without acknowledging. Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. She understood completely. The words he hadn't spoken, the emotions they had both carried silently, now hung between them, almost tangible. It was the kind of moment that demanded courage, not physical courage, but emotional bravery. To speak, to recognize, to accept the bond that had formed. "I feel it too," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been surprised by how much today has meant, by how much I appreciate you." Alex's eyes lit with a quiet wonder. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of feeling something and not knowing how to handle it. Afraid that it might be complicated or confusing." Emily reached out instinctively, placing her hand briefly over his knot in a romantic or inappropriate way, but as a gesture of reassurance and trust. "Sometimes the best things in life are worth feeling, even if they're complicated," she said gently. A pause settled over them, filled with the weight of all the unspoken words, the shared glances, and the emotional intimacy they had carefully nurtured. Emily realized that their connection wasn't just about the past or the present, it was about the choices they made now. The choice to notice, to care, to embrace the small, meaningful moments that life offered. Alex smiled, a shy but genuine expression that mirrored the flutter in her own chest. "Then, I guess today matters more than I realized," he said quietly. "And maybe this is the start of something worth paying attention to." Emily's eyes softened. She knew he was right. Today mattered not because of anything grand or extraordinary, but because it had brought them to this turning point. They had shared laughter, memories, quiet truths, and unspoken feelings. They had faced hesitation and longing, and now they were standing on the edge of possibility. Aware that the choices they made next could shape something meaningful and lasting. The first stars began to appear in the sky above them, twinkling faintly against the deepening blue. Emily felt a profound gratitude for the day, for the unexpected connection, and for the courage it had taken to acknowledge the emotions they had both carried quietly. "Let's not rush it," she said softly. "Let's just see where this goes and appreciate the moments along the way." Alex nodded, his smile growing warmer. "I'd like that," he said, "more than anything." As the evening deepened, Emily realized that the turning point wasn't a single declaration or event. It was the shared understanding that they were both willing to be present, willing to feel, and willing to allow life to guide them gently forward. And in that quiet acceptance, a new chapter began, full of hope, emotional richness, and the kind of connection that could change hearts in ways no one expected. The sun had finally disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the sky painted in soft shades of lavender and rose. Emily and Alex walked slowly back toward her home, their steps unhurried, each lost in thought yet sharing an unspoken understanding. Jake ran ahead, waving to friends he had made at the fair, his laughter echoing softly in the evening air. Emily glanced at Alex, noticing how the fading light caught the earnest expression on his face. She felt a gentle warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude, affection, and the quiet realization that life had offered her something rare, a moment of true connection, one that would linger long after today ended. When they reached the front door, Emily paused. The moment felt significant, though subtle, a turning point in the ordinary rhythm of life. "Thank you for coming today," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight she hadn't intended. I really enjoyed this, more than I can say." Alex smiled, a shy but sincere expression that mirrored the emotions she felt but couldn't fully put into words. "I did too," he admitted. "I didn't expect today to mean so much, but it really did. I'm glad I came." For a moment, they stood quietly, the cool evening air wrapping around them like a gentle embrace. Neither needed to rush. The connection between them was strong, subtle, and entirely unspoken. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about presence, understanding, and the shared acknowledgement of emotions that had quietly grown throughout the day. Emily felt a flicker of bittersweet nostalgia. She thought of all the days she had spent feeling unseen or unacknowledged, the moments she had longed for understanding and warmth. And now, here, it was simple, genuine, and unforced. She realized that life's most profound gifts often arrived quietly, disguised as ordinary afternoons and small decisions. Alex looked up at her, a thoughtful expression in his eyes. "I hope we can have more days like this," he said gently, "where we just talk and notice things and feel things without worrying too much about what comes next." Emily's lips curved into a tender smile. "I hope so too," she said. "Moments like today, they remind you that connection matters and that sometimes the smallest gestures are the ones that stay with you forever." Eek. Unaware of the quiet intimacy between them, tugged at Emily's hand. "Mom, can we check out the lemonade stand again before it closes?" Emily laughed softly, and Alex chuckled along with her. It was an ordinary request, yet it felt emblematic of the day itself. Reminder that life's magic often came wrapped in simplicity. Together, they walked toward the last few tables of the fair, savoring the laughter, the scents, and the fading light. Later, back inside, Emily poured another cup of tea, the steam curling into the warm glow of her kitchen. Jake had already gone to his room, and the house was quiet once more. She looked at Alex, who had settled comfortably in the living room chair, and felt the profound peace that comes from being seen, truly and without pretense. "You know," she said softly, "today reminded me of something important. That life can surprise you, even when you least expect it. And that connection, genuine, heartfelt connection, it's always worth noticing." Alex nodded, eyes reflecting the gentle light. "I'll remember this day," he said quietly. "It might sound silly, but it feels like one of those days you don't forget, where something changes inside you without you even realizing it at first." Emily felt a lump in her throat, not from sadness, but from the deep emotion of the moment. She understood exactly what he meant. Something had changed, subtly yet profoundly. A small bond had formed, one built on trust, understanding, and the unspoken acknowledgement of feelings that were safe, genuine, and enduring. They sat together for a while longer, talking about light things, books, favorite memories, and plans for the coming week. There was no rush, no need to define the day beyond the way it had already touched their hearts. The room was filled with quiet laughter and easy conversation, a space where time seemed to stretch and soften, allowing them to fully appreciate the connection they had found. Finally, it was time for Alex to leave. Emily walked him to the door, and for a moment neither spoke. They simply stood there, a comfortable silence stretching between them, heavy with meaning yet completely unspoken. "See you soon," Emily asked softly, though she knew the answer was understood without words. Alex smiled, a quiet certainty in his eyes. "Yes," he said,